Hey everybody, are you ready to see the secret sauce of sewing a sharp collar? If so, stay tuned. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Now in this video, I'll be using the collar and the collar stand pieces from Simplicity 8546. If you have a similar pattern to this, of course, just go ahead and grab your collar and your collar stand pieces. All right. So the first thing that you want to do, of course, is you want to cut out 2 pieces of your collar and 2 pieces of your collar stand. And you want to cut out 1 piece of fusible interfacing for your collar and your collar stand and go ahead and fuse them together. But before you fuse the interfacing onto your collar piece, what I want you to do with your fusible interfacing piece is go ahead and just clip out the corner. Clip out about, we want to clip out the seam allowance for this piece. So clip out the seam allowance and you'll see just about how much I clipped out, and go ahead and fuse it onto your collar piece. Now after you've done that, what we want to do is we want to start sewing the collar. So I want you to take your fusible interface piece and your collar, and I want you to pin them together, and we're going to take this over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew our collar together. All right, so ultimately we're going to be sewing up the short sides all the way across, then down the other short side. But before you sew down the short side, the first thing that I want you to do is go to your sewing machine, and I want you to sew from the long end all the way across to this end using a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Now after you're done with that, I want you to bring that to your pressing station, and I want you to press that seam allowance open. All right, so now that I've taken my collar over to my sewing machine and I've sewn across the long end only, I'm going to press the seams open. All right, now for this tutorial, I'm going to be using a contrasting thread so that you can see my work. All right, so if you were sewing this, of course, you're going to be using a thread the same color as your fabric. All right, so now I want to go ahead and I want to press the seam open. So what we're preparing for is an understitch. We're going to be understitching the undercollar. Now your undercollar is the part of the collar that's interfaced. All right, so just give that a really good press. Press those seams open really good. All right, so here's what we have. All right, here's what we have. Here's your collar. So the next thing that I want you to do is just kind of push that up a little bit. So the next thing that I want you to do is take like a marking tool, whichever. I use this chalk, and what I want you to do is just from each one of these points, I want you to measure over approximately 3/4 of an inch, and just put the little mark like maybe like right there, 3/4 of an inch. All right, it doesn't have to be exact. So the next thing that I want you to do is go over to your sewing machine. Well, actually, we can probably put that mark probably approximately right there so we can see it on this side. Same thing over here. All right, so what I want you to do, the side that's interfaced, that's your undercollar. So we want to understitch your undercollar. And the reason why we understitch is because we don't want the undercollar peeping through onto the side that the public will see, right? So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to your sewing machine and do an understitch. Now, an understitch is, if you don't already know, it's a stitch that's probably about 1/8 of an inch away from this seam right here. So go over to your sewing machine, and on this side, the side that's interfaced, I want you to sew all the way down about an 1/8 of an inch away from this seam. And for me, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sew that on this side, on the good side. And the only reason why I'm doing that is because the bobbin thread, it's not the best looking thread. So when you're sewing, so I want this to have the good side of the thread. So go ahead over to your machine and sew 1/8 of an inch all the way down. All right. All right, so after I went ahead and I understitched my under collar, you'll see the white stitches. I went from one point to the other point at the end. All right, so the next thing that I want you to do is go ahead and put these back right sides together. All right, and go ahead and pin. So now what I want you to do is go ahead and sew down your side, your short sides. Okay? Go ahead and sew down your short sides. Okay, so now that I've sewn the side seams, the short sides and the long side of my collar, I'm ready to move on. But I know you're probably asking, why did I understitch before I sewed the whole collar? Well, the reason why I understitched before, normally you would understitch after you've sewn the collar together. But the reason why I did it like that is because once you've sewn up the short sides and across the top and down, and you try to understitch this, it gets kind of hard to do. It gets kind of hard to put this up under your needle and so I like to do things a short, easy route, but we'll end up with the same result. All right, so the next thing that you want to do is grab your scissors and you are going to cut out your corners. All right, now remember, we don't have any interfacing in this area right here. All right, so just go ahead and cut that out. And then just cut a little bit off over here. Same thing over here. Remember, don't cut through your stitches because we don't want a little hole there. Do the same thing on this side. And all right. So you see I cut the corners out. Okay, next thing we want to do is turn your collar right side out. I just stick my thumb in there, hold it with my index finger, and just bring it through and push it on out. So by removing that interfacing in the corner, it helps you to get some sharp edges, some sharp corners, I should say, because you don't have all that fabric in your corner. All right, so if you have a point turner, a pointer, a corner pointer, go ahead and push those out. Don't do it too hard because you don't want to poke a hole in there. All right, so now what I want you to do is go ahead and fold your collar over. And then you're going to give this collar a really good press. All right, give it a really good press. All right, and then you'll see my understitched line. And again, the understitching is going to keep the fabric, the undercollar from peeking through over here, right? So we won't see any of that. So understitching is good, like if you were taking your shirt, your collar, and you wanted to use a contrasting fabric for your undercollar. That's the purpose of, one of the reasons for you to understitch your undercollar. All right. So the next piece that we're going to be using is, I want you to grab is your uninterfaced. I want you to grab your uninterfaced collar stand and go and grab the front and back pieces of your top. All right, so one thing that I forgot to mention is when you're done with your collar and you've already, you've pressed it really good, you've turned it inside out and you've pressed it really good, I forgot to mention that that's a good opportunity to go ahead and top stitch your collar. And one of the reasons why I did not trim down the seam allowances inside is because I knew that I was going to do a top stitch. So when you do a top stitch, you want that extra fabric underneath or in between so that you can get a really good, nice looking stitch on the outside for your top stitch. All right, so we're done with our collar and we can set that to the side for now. The next thing I want you to grab is your top, and I want you to place it wrong sides facing up. All right, you should already have your two fronts connected to your back. So I want you to grab the uninterfaced piece of your collar stand. Okay, now on your collar stand you should have two notches, two single notches. Now what I want you to do is I want you to take the right side of your collar stand, and I want you to pin it to the wrong side of your shirt. All right, so go ahead and match up these two single notches to the single notches on your collar stand and pin all the way around. So I'm gonna match up my notches first, and then I'm going to pin all the way around. And yes, you did hear me correctly. Pin the right side of your collar stand to the wrong side of your top. This technique, it's the same thing as what you would see in your pattern directions, but I just do mine a little bit differently. And the reason why is because I like the inside of my shirt, I want it to have a seam. I don't want it to be hand stitched or anything, but you'll see what I mean once we sew this together. So again, take your uninterfaced piece, your collar stand, and you are going to sew the right side of the collar stand to the wrong side of your top. All right. Now once you have this all the way pinned, I want you to take it over to your sewing machine, and I want you to sew at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I know in your sewing directions it may tell you to sew at a 3/8 of an inch, and that's fine. I prefer 5/8 of an inch. I can work better with that seam allowance, and there's not too much of a difference. There's not too much of a difference. Me personally, again, I can work better with a 5/8 inch. All right, so again, take your uninterfaced collar stand, take the right side, and I want you to pin it to the wrong side of your collar. All right, so go to your machine and go ahead and sew all the way around that curve, 5/8 of an inch. Okay, so I have went ahead and I've sewn my uninterfaced collar stand to the wrong side of my shirt, and you'll see, remember I was telling you I like for the insides of my garments to be finished and look very professional. So after you've sewn that, I'll just go ahead and give it a little press, making sure you're kind of pressing up, pressing that collar up. All right, and also make sure when you are sewing your collar stand on, I hope that you were sewing very carefully so that you don't have any tucks or anything. All right, so again, This will be the inside of our shirt, and there's a clean finish on the inside. I don't really like hand sewing, so any technique that I can figure out or find to where I don't have to do any hand sewing, that's what I'm going to do. All right. So the next thing that you want to bring to your sewing table is we are ready for, now we can actually leave this out. And we are ready for our collar and our interfaced collar stand. Okay? So what we're going to do is we are going to sandwich your collar in between your uninterfaced collar stand and in between your interfaced collar stand. All right? So I like to take things slow. So what I'm going to do is I am going to match the notches up to this first. I'm going to attach my collar to my uninterfaced collar stand. Now when you're attaching your collar to this, you want to make sure that the interface side of your collar is facing up towards you. All right? So if you were to open this up, here's the interface side. So I want that facing up. All right? And I don't know if you can see, but these are my two notches. I just kind of did it with my marker, but I'm going to go ahead and match those notches up, those double notches. Match the double notches up first, and then pin in between, and then pin all the way around. So remember, we are sandwiching in your collar in between your undercollars. Go ahead and pin this. And I know that I'm probably double pinning, but I like to take my time and get it right and have everything together evenly. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to take my interfaced collar stand, and it's going to be, we're going to sandwich your collar in, and we're going to take the right side of the collar stand and place it face down so that it's really right sides together with your other collar stand. Okay, I'm just going to pin that there, but we're also going to, we have double notches here that we're going to line up. Going to use my pins that's already there. Line up my double notches. And we're just going to pin all the way across. Then what I like to do is just to match these end pieces up. So everything's even. All right, and do the same over here. All right, so now I am going to take this over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, starting from this curve all the way over here, all the way over there. All right, so you see that your collar is sandwiched in between the two collar stands. All right, so take it over to your sewing machine and sew at a 5/8 inch all the way around. All right, so now that you've sewn from this corner over here all the way over, we are going to trim down your seam allowances. And I already kind of cut them down already, and I cut them down about 1/4 of an inch. Just going to come over here and get this one. All right, and then after you trim the seam allowances down in your collar, I'm going to flip it over and give it a nice little press. You see, for collar, and then just give it a nice little press. Flip it over. Same thing, give it a nice little press on this side. Now this is the back of your shirt here. So let me flip this around, and we're going to do some top stitching. All right. So we're going to take our raw edges and we are going to fold them under. And you're folding these under 5/8 of an inch. And we're just going to fold, you're just going to fold this under and have the fold touch. You have a line of stitching around here, so you're going to have that fold touch that line of stitching, and then you'll just place a pin. I'm going to fold it under. Make sure it's touching that line. Pin, and see, fold it under. And we're folding under, again, we're folding under about, we are folding under 5/8 of an inch. Place a pin. Okay. Folding under. And place a pin. All right. And place a pin. So once you have this all folded under and you have your fold actually, you're going to have your fold actually touching the stitch line. We're going to cover up that stitch line. You have your fold there. Make sure this is tucked under. You can place a pin there. All right, so now you're going to take this over to your sewing machine and you are going to top stitch from this point all the way over. All right. Okay, so after you've top stitched your collar stand, we've top stitched it. See the top stitches, it's in white. Go ahead and give it a final little press to lock in those stitches. We can actually fold our collar back, give it a nice little press, and you are done. All right, all done. So if you liked the video, go ahead and give me a like and go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Anything that you saw me using in my video, point turners, scissors, whatever, you can find it in the description, where you can visit my Amazon store and purchase any utensils or sewing supplies that you saw in my video. So give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching.